Hey guys, David Johnston here. Today and day 25 of these crypto, DeFi, and PegNet talks that I've been doing, I want to talk about fiat and specifically fiat currency. So if you've spent any amount of time in crypto at all, you've probably heard this phrase fiat currency referring to government currencies. But I think it's worthwhile in sort of backing up and sort of unpacking what that means and why people in crypto are so passionate about freedom from fiat. So, first of all, fiat is a Latin term that means by order or by law. So, if you look up the definition, it says, fiat is a decree or an arbitrary order. And that's a lot of how people feel about fiat currency is countries arbitrarily say, hey, this is the currency of our country. You have to use this currency, or this currency is valid for all sorts of payments within our jurisdiction. The problem is what many people don't realize is most of the world's governments at this point have moved away from the gold standard. I still meet people on a regular basis who think that the dollar is backed by gold. And I don't blame them for this misconception, because it's not like the government had a big debate and passed a bunch of laws to move us from the gold standard to backed by nothing. It was arbitrary. It was a executive order issued in 1971 by Richard Nixon, of all presidents, took the US off of the gold standard, or at least sort of the remnants of what was left of the gold standard, and you could no longer take currency and trade it in for gold. And that had sort of already been done away with slowly over time for retail folks, but this effectively even closed the window to institutions to claim their gold that was supposed to be on deposit in Fort Knox. So that's where they used to store the gold. So having moved away from real backing in the form of gold, or in the case of cryptocurrencies, you have computation and the network itself that secures the currency. Now it's sort of just an empty promise. In fact, if you've ever looked closely at one of these, you can see at the top it's a Federal Reserve note. If you look very closely in the fine print, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. And this effectively tells you the legal tender laws, in short, that this money is good in this jurisdiction for all sorts of payments. And that's effectively the only backing that's left for fiat currencies, is what you can buy with them. You may have also heard the term the petrodollar. And this refers to a deal that famously was cut with Saudi Arabia, where they would take payment for all oil and oil contracts in dollars. This was the birth of the petrodollar, if you will, thanks to good old Henry Kissinger back when he was in the government. So this sort of gives the US dollar backing, in the sense that you can buy oil with dollars. And oil having been the predominant energy source for most of the world's auto fleets, for their militaries, for all these purposes, all these countries around the world had to have dollars in order to buy oil. So this was a sort of interesting way of trying to reestablish why people needed dollars. And since then, the dollar has become extremely dominant in international trade. It's by far used as the most currency. But that's effectively all there is to it. And if there's competition from others, then the dominance of the dollar gets challenged over time. But without a real backing, the same thing has happened to the dollar that has happened with all fiat currencies, which is they devalue over time, right? Since the Federal Reserve took over the dollar in 1913, you've had something like a 97, 98% reduction in its buying power. So as they've printed more and more and more money, this has devalued the dollar, right? This is why prices go up every year. And sort of this is the birth of of monetary competition in the form of decentralized systems like Bitcoin and Ethereum that have their own independent monetary policy. And so for the first time, the average person can opt into the monetary policy like they like the best, whether that's one like Bitcoin, where inflation decreases more and more over time until it's extremely low level of inflation, almost sort of emulating a gold-like monetary policy where there's only 1 or 2% new units every year entering the system. And that's really, really attractive. Ethereum has a similar mechanism where it's a constant set of inflation, but as the number of units in the system rise, the total inflation also declines over time. And in either system, you have a pretty good idea of exactly how many units there will be in the future, and you should have that predictability. And that's the thing that's frustrating about the fiat currencies, is you don't have that clarity. For any political reason, the central bank will often increase the inflation rate by printing more and more currency when they perceive, they want to intervene in the economy when there's a downturn, whatever have you. But it has the effect of reducing everyone's purchasing power. There is no free lunch, as they say in economics. And so when you cause inflation, you reduce purchasing power. So I wanted to kind of talk about that because I wanted to give people a background of why people call it fiat currency, what the history of it is, the fact that this is very applicable to most of the world's government currencies at this point, and why people are so passionate about moving to hard money systems that are backed by real assets and have proof on chain that nobody has gotten special treatment, that mining rewards come out on a regular and predictable basis, and there isn't sort of this smoky back room where decisions about everybody's purchasing power are made. So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out in the next 5-10 years. We're effectively moving into something we've never seen before, which is monetary competition, not between states, but between these decentralized systems, which are self-sovereign, and the traditional monetary authorities. So as that competition ramps up, I hope that some of the more progressive jurisdictions will take that competitive cue and start adopting many of the things that make the blockchain and cryptocurrency so attractive to people, namely predictable inflation, transparency, real-time audits, sort of all the things that make crypto honest money. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in the current fiat systems, and by leveraging blockchain, they can move in that direction. So we'll see jurisdiction by jurisdiction how that plays out. But this goes back to crypto and PegNet, and effectively because PegNet has the top 20 fiats, the top 20 cryptos, gold and silver, you can pick your own monetary policy. You can move value into the system. You can have a real-time audit of all the value that's moved into the PegNet system. And so you can have confidence about its honesty. You can have confidence about how you got value into the system. And you can effectively choose any financial exposure or monetary exposure that you want out of that top 20 fiats, those top 20 cryptos, and gold and silver. So I find this a really fascinating thing because over time, moving my purchasing power out of traditional fiat currencies is the best thing that I ever did, right? Moving into hard money systems preserved my purchasing power the last 8-10 years, and I expect it to do the same thing going forward the rest of my life. So, little thank you to Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever you are out there. Thanks for bringing around Bitcoin. Thank you to Vitalik and the folks that pioneered Ethereum, and to Roger for what he's done with Bitcoin Cash and all the early pioneers that created these systems and helped scale them to the multi-billion-dollar networks that they are today. So anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you guys for being on this journey with me. Enjoy your weekend. I hope you had a great Easter, and wash your hands, wear a mask, and be awesome to one another. I'll catch you guys later. Take care. Crypto on. Bye.